Okay, this will be a quick little video on the movie Wag the Dog, which is honestly maybe the most important movie of all time. Definitely one of the most important movies of all time. It is such an interesting movie on a whole bunch of different levels. It is like super, super eerie and coincidental, quote unquote, just how the movie mirrored events that were happening in real life when it was released in 1997. And it really seems like this movie reveals so much of how the media works and how it manipulates people. It was very, very relevant back in 1997. And I think this movie is way, way, way more relevant even today. So, first off, the movie name comes from the term wag the dog, which the definition of is right here. It says to advocate for or create a distraction that diverts attention from a more pressing political problem. And if you haven't seen the movie, the plot rundown, real quick, is that there's a president who's facing a sex scandal 11 days before the election. He got caught on camera groping a girl. And Robert De Niro plays a Washington, D.C., sort of like a fixer type guy who attempts to fix this problem by hiring Dustin Hoffman, who's this big Hollywood producer. And Robert De Niro hires him to produce footage of a fake war with Albania. And their hopes is that this war is going to grab headlines, grab the public's attention, and it's going to just divert media attention and the public's attention away from this sex scandal that the president is facing. And they just go totally all out. Kirsten Dunst plays like a little girl who's digitally made to look like she's saving a kitten during a bombing. They have a bunch of famous singers like record a song in support of the war, and it starts running everywhere on the radio. And then Woody Harrelson plays this supposed war hero who's captured, and to create this whole story around their attempts to save him. But basically, the plot of the movie is that this Washington, D.C. fixer creates this war with the help of other people, and it's used to distract people and, more importantly, the media away from the sex scandal. So that's the plot. And not only is the movie just very, very interesting and on the money, but the whole story surrounding the movie is incredibly strange. It's almost unreal. So the movie came out in late 1997, Christmas Day 1997, actually. And obviously, Bill Clinton was president at this time. And the whole plot of the movie has a lot in common with the whole Monica Lewinsky scandal. But Wag the Dog came out 3 weeks before the Monica Lewinsky story broke. January 17th, 1998 is when the Lewinsky story broke, and Christmas Day 1997 is when Wag the Dog came out. And obviously it would have been filmed, months before that. And after Wag the Dog was released and the whole Lewinsky scandal broke after it had been out for a few weeks, it brought the movie a lot of attention. There's all these articles about how life is imitating art, and it was called, such an eerie coincidence and all these things. But probably the eeriest thing is that in the movie, and this is honestly really bizarre, so in the movie, the president is inappropriate with this girl. She's wearing a beret right there. And this is kind of the shot that is broadcast into everyone's living room. And then just a few weeks later, this is the shot of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky that was broadcast everywhere. I mean, the two shots are like so similar that it's kind of a bad version of the movie still on the right there, but she is wearing a black beret just like Monica Lewinsky is in that picture. And again, the movie Wag the Dog came out 3 weeks before the whole Lewinsky scandal broke. And the similarities in those photos wasn't the only strange thing going on with the movie. There were also a couple other, like, really, really curious things going on. So it wasn't until August 17th that Bill Clinton testified before a grand jury. And during this testimony, he finally admitted to a quote, inappropriate relationship with Monica Lewinsky. Now, this was over 6 months after the Lewinsky story initially broke. And up until this grand jury testimony in August, he totally denied that they'd had a relationship. So for 6 months, he denied that there was any sort of relationship. And very interestingly, just a few days after Bill Clinton's testimony and the day before Monica Lewinsky was scheduled to testify herself in front of the grand jury, the United States carried out this huge missile attack on Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. They launched 75 Tomahawk missiles at various locations in Afghanistan and destroyed just a whole bunch of targets. So obviously, this is nearly identical to the plot of Wag the Dog. And if you just look at the media coverage from the week of Bill Clinton's grand jury testimony, it's just a perfect example of how this whole distraction, Wag the Dog thing is effective. So on the left there is Monday, August 17th, 1998, which is the day Bill Clinton was going to testify in front of the grand jury. And the red highlighted part is, the coverage of his testimony. And there's a big story on the front page on Tuesday. The next day, another huge story on the front page. Wednesday and Thursday of that week, basically the entire front page of USA Today is dominated by stories about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky and the whole scandal. And then this is when the attack on Afghanistan happened. And the very next day on Friday, this red part on the left there's just one little 3-sentence story about the Monica Lewinsky Bill Clinton scandal. And that yellow part there, which takes up basically the entire front page, is the story about the attack on Afghanistan. And it's not like the Clinton Lewinsky story just fizzled out, because this was the day that Monica Lewinsky was testifying in front of the grand jury. So there was a lot happening, but the story had just been, pushed to the side by this missile attack on Afghanistan. And then this happened again right during the impeachment hearings a few months later, because the day before the House was going to vote on Bill Clinton's impeachment, there was this massive bombing raid in Iraq. It was a huge, huge story, and it just pushed the Bill Clinton story to the side. Even though the Bill Clinton story was a huge story, got pushed to the side. The focus was on this bombing raid in Iraq. And it even put the impeachment vote on hold. And there were all these articles and stories talking about how convenient the timing of this Iraq bombing was, and how similar the whole thing was to Wag the Dog. This article here opens up. It says, the movie that seemed to be on everyone's lips yesterday as the United States attacked Iraq was Wag the Dog. And so this example was pretty obvious because it all went down so close to when the movie was released, and Wag the Dog was still kind of fresh in people's minds. So a lot of people pointed out the similarities, but this whole staging of events to distract people, this is something that I think happens absolutely all of the time. And it's not just wars and bombings and attacks on foreign countries. There are these major, major events that happen, and they garner all this media attention and coverage. They hog headlines, they dominate the news cycle, and whatever else was going on was just kind of forgotten about or pushed to the back burner. So I just wanted to make this quick little video about the movie, because a couple of my upcoming videos are going to be looking at some really bizarre events, some really major events from history that happened, and looking at them kind of through the lens of whether these events could have been scripted or staged events that were used to hog up the news coverage and distract people from other things that were going on at the time. And in fact, in Wag the Dog, Robert De Niro's character even talks about another instance of this happening when in 1983 there was this massive bombing of a U.S. Army base in Lebanon that killed hundreds of U.S. soldiers. And then the very next day, the United States just randomly invaded Grenada halfway across the world. And this invasion just totally dominated the news cycle and pushed the story of the Army base bombing to the side. And I actually already did a video about the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion in 1986 potentially being a distraction from a couple other really major, major events that were going on at the time of this. This is one of my all-time favorite stories. It is such a crazy mystery. I won't really get into it here in this video, but I will link this Challenger video in the description. And I do think this whole Wag the Dog phenomenon is just as relevant today, probably even more so today, where we get these stories and social media just goes insane talking about these topics. Everything else that's going on just kind of gets pushed to the side and not covered nearly as much. Just a couple of recent examples. About a year ago, there were these UFOs or drones or whatever in New Jersey, and this was the biggest story of all time for about a week. It was all anyone talked about. And then it basically just vanished. Even a few months ago, the quote unquote JFK files were released, and there was all this news coverage. There was all this social media talk about them. And everything else that was going on at the time was just kind of forgotten about. And then these whole JFK files just ended up becoming just basically a big nothing burger. But it got people talking, and it got them distracted for a few days. And even this whole Charlie Kirk thing, I kind of wonder if this isn't some sort of distraction, because the coverage and the attention that this has been getting is just absolutely off the charts, not just from the traditional media, but from alternative media, from conspiracy theory, quote unquote, sites. There is just so much out there every single day on social media about various theories and research and new information that's being learned. I mean, it is just really, really over the top. And I do think it's kind of convenient that there's all this attention being paid to the Charlie Kirk thing, right as the Gaza Strip is just, basically being totally annihilated, pretty much wiped off the face of the earth. And yeah, people are talking about this and everything, but the coverage of the situation in Gaza is nowhere near, not even close to everything with the Charlie Kirk thing. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I definitely recommend Wag the Dog if you haven't seen it. It is such a great movie, and I do think you can learn a lot from the movie. It's really interesting to look at past and even current events and kind of look at them through like a Wag the Dog lens and just kind of look at what else is going on in the world and just considering whether some of these major events that just get all this media attention could be being used as basically a distraction from other things that are going on. And then lastly, just wanted to give a big shout out to the subscribers here on YouTube and on Patreon. Really, truly greatly appreciate your support. It means so much to me. So thanks again. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon with another video.